It was incredibly hard for me to choose a word that would fully describe what we at Beast Studios, This Is the Police, even is. Is it a cop drama? Is it a gritty film noir game? Is it a job simulator? Or is it some odd amalgamation of all the above? Well, it turns out that none of these phrases will even come close to describing this game. In this review, I'm going to take you through the shitty and dangerous streets of Freeburg so I can show you just how hard it is to be retired Duke Nukem. Police Chief Jack Boyd. We'll start with the positives. The story of This Is the Police is a complicated one, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it to the casual gamer, so to speak. I will, however, recommend it to people who love the idea of a multi-dimensional and troubled protagonist. Jack Boyd is not your average hero, but we'll get to that. The story revolves around the seedy political scene of the fictional city of Freeburg. Branches of the government compete against one another to gain favor with citizens through superficial public displays of virtue, all the while trampling over the civil liberties of these same citizens. Funny, right? How absolutely relevant this all is. I won't get too into real-world events, but all I can say is that this was the most appropriate time for me to play this game on stream and analyze it. As my viewers can tell you, the plot of the game was absolutely uncanny when we consider the political climate that we all live in and are subjected to currently. Anyway, to put things in a neat little nutshell, Jack Boyd, the current police chief of Freeburg, has been voluntold to retire in 180 days. Jack is determined to not leave his post without something to show for it, so your ultimate goal is to raise $500,000 before the deadline through any means necessary. And I mean any means. Along with the legitimate branches of the government who are themselves corrupt and conniving, we have the city's mafia to deal with as well. The mafia is led by the notorious Christopher Sand, who makes it very clear that he has a stake in Freeburg's political realm. The game starts with your deputy being forced out of the police due to a scandal involving corruption. It's made quite clear within the first 10 minutes of the game that these accusations are completely true. And it is at this point that you make your first decision that will impact your career. Your deputy asks you to continue his alliance with the mafia to maintain the status quo. You can either say yes, due to some sense of loyalty Jack has for the man, or you can stick to your principles and say no, leaving your deputy to his fate. I'd recommend playing the game yourself to find out exactly what happens. What I will say is that the plot of this game can make your stomach turn if you're sensitive to violence and the depravity of humanity. I know that sounds horribly dark, but I did say that this was a gritty game. As the game progresses, you make more and more decisions that will affect your relationships with the Mafia, City Hall, and various other groups who play large parts in running the city. Such alliances can include the Catholic Church, the labor union, and a shady corporation run by an unscrupulous man. Although there is a larger story at play, and you will mostly get caught up in that, Jack has his own story to tell. John St. John, aka Duke Nukem, does an amazing job at being the jaded and grumpy Jack Boyd. When you meet Jack Boyd, you learn that his wife has left him and that he's a drug addict who uses prescription pills for a multitude of reasons, none of which are all that legitimate. Jack's story is a sad one, but sad is such a lazy way for me to describe it. It's complicated. Despite you rooting for Jack and his success as the police chief, you can't help but feel conflicted with the way he handles his own issues and how he describes himself. I suppose it would be like if you took Mike from Breaking Bad, made him into an addict, and gave him a high-level position. But instead of the almost diplomatic way that Mike operates, Jack is not one for diplomacy or negotiation.
Go fuck yourself, Troy Star.
Everything I've told you is the plate that holds the real meat and potatoes of the game. Never have I played a game that so accurately represents the mundane, repetitive nature of being a police officer and dealing with small-time criminals, petty citizens, and psychopaths. You yourself become jaded by the time you're at day 180. Nothing surprises you anymore. It's incredibly easy to immerse yourself in Jack's role and be as frustrated and bored when false calls come your way. But it's also easy to form an attachment to your officers despite you not actually having any direct interactions with these characters. It's strange, but there's something really special about seeing an officer's face who has been in your employ since day one. On the flip side, you get your breath knocked out of you if they go on a call and don't survive. The minimalist nature of the gameplay would make you think that you'd hardly be attached to anything and anyone in the game, or even really enjoy the repetition. But this game will absolutely surprise you. I urge you to try it for yourself to see what I mean. You might end up hating me, or you might end up being as indifferent to the horrors of the city as I and my viewers are, but the rest of the experience will probably make you think twice about hating me. Despite what I'm going to say in the rest of this video, I think that this game is a treat to play if you're looking for an incredibly immersive and authentic experience. If you like crime shows, mystery, and political intrigue, I think that you'll really enjoy playing This Is the Police. Holy shit, I cannot possibly overstate the best parts of this game. If you're not an avid comic reader, you would think that the minimalist art would make you feel like you're not able to connect with the character of Jack Boyd or his story. I'm not an avid comic book reader, so honestly the comic kind of aesthetic threw me off quite a bit when I first started playing the game. How can you possibly tell a story about abstract ideas like political intrigue, greed, distrust, and ego through an art style that is made up entirely of dull colors and faceless characters? I'll tell you the answer to that question. It's the voice acting and the atmosphere of the game. John St. John's voice performance is what makes you incredibly sympathetic to Jack Boyd despite the brutish nature of his thoughts. I think what really makes you root for Jack is the fact that he never bullshits you. He tells you exactly what he feels and who he is. A drug addict, an angry husband, a jaded police officer, the list goes on. On an interesting side note, if you choose to play the story by being morally bankrupt, it adds a layer of intrigue to the plot. Suddenly, Jack isn't the guy who wants to do what's right for the sake of it. He's the guy who doesn't give a shit about anyone and will destroy whoever gets in his way, despite him appearing to be a hero to other characters in the game. I didn't do a playthrough like that. I honestly can't bring myself to be evil in most video games, but if you choose to play This Is the Police, I think experiencing the story in this way will give you a really unique perspective on Freeburg and the antics that Jack has to be witness to, as well as his own. So, back to John St. John's stellar performance. Shit, I don't even know how to describe it. I suppose at first it's kind of jarring hearing a voice like his. It's gravelly and powerful and honestly intimidating, just like Jack. As you progress through the story, you come across many scenes where Jack uses his imposing presence to get what he wants from people. And although you find his actions quite reprehensible, there's a part of you that feels fucking awesome to be witness to such assertion. I think most of us try to be polite to other people, even when they piss us off. And we all have the moments hours later where we feel like we should have said something witty or sarcastic at the time to really drive home that we won the argument or we told off that asshole who was bothering us. Jack probably never has those moments because he always seems to stick it to whoever is pissing him off, and it's so refreshing to see. Maybe it's a bit sadistic, but seeing him actually punch the face of someone who needs to be punched and tell someone who needs to fuck off to actually fuck off makes you ignore all of Jack's flaws because he's just such a badass motherfucker. He's the guy I think some of us wish we were, minus the really dark stuff. But you can sympathize with who he is. It's like he tells you in the game. He's not a hero or the person others should be looking up to. He's just a guy trying to navigate the strange waters he finds himself in. He's very much middle-aged, he has a gigantic beer gut, and he's got a huge bald spot. He's no Chris Redfield or Nathan Drake. He's not the hero you generally want to play as. He's so incredibly ordinary looking, but that doesn't take away from his character. It enhances it quite a bit. I know that's rather vague, but I hope I did at least a little justice in telling you how awesome John St. John's acting is in the game. We control Jack's actions, but a lot of the time it was like picking the lesser of two evils, rather than really picking the right choice. And I think that's what makes This Is the Police a game that I wanted to talk about. There's nothing cut and dry about it. It's unsettling at times, disturbing at others. The good moments are few and far between, but Jack's devotion to his job is what really keeps you invested in his story and the Freeburg Police Department. I know I briefly touched upon it, but I'd really like to show you how perfect the atmosphere is for what the game is. It's funny because WIAP could have gone in the opposite direction and made a world as detailed and compelling as LA Noir's, but the minimalist comic book thing really works here somehow. It wouldn't be the first choice in my head, but I'm really glad they went that way. You never actually control Jack's movements or have any direct interaction with the other characters or even the police officers in your employ. All your choices are text-based, and the cutscenes are bare bones in their design, but you still feel as strongly as you would about, let's say, Cole Phelps' story. Bukowski is where it's at. Forget Cole. Anyway, I could tell that during my stream, I and my viewers were getting attached to these static images of the police officers who we ordered around all day. We even started coming up with stories for some of them who were special in some way or another. I don't know whether that speaks to our imaginations or the game actually dragging us into the story. Maybe it's a little of both. That being said, I will say that it's very important for you to be into a role-playing sort of game to enjoy This Is the Police. You will get bored otherwise. The game is designed for you to feel the restlessness and boredom of someone in a crime-ridden city's police department. The crimes never stop, the false calls never stop, people complaining never stops. The dull colors of the game further portray just how dreary and shitty life can be sometimes. So just be prepared to really embrace your role as police chief if you decide to venture into this story. Anyway, I think it's the uniqueness of the art style that really made this game memorable. A lot of games these days are devoted to appearing almost lifelike in their aesthetic, but This Is the Police isn't one of those games, and I really appreciate that. I'd argue that this game could almost reach the realm of art. The lifeless colors and the austere representation of Freeburg really drives home the plot of the game. Life just sort of goes on, even when you've made horrible decisions. Even when your heart gets broken or someone betrays you, you just sort of keep living. The story isn't supposed to be an emotional changing of the status quo or some triumph against a great evil. It's a story about riding the line between evil and decent. I can't even say good, because nothing in Freeburg is good. I hate to say that it reflects reality so well, but it honestly does. A lot of people, myself included, say that life is never black and white. It's always shades of gray. And I'm telling you right now, you will not find a grayer game than This Is the Police. They're all incredibly eccentric. Despite it being obvious that there are people in the world like these characters, you still hope that what you're seeing is a way exaggerated version of reality. Unfortunately, I don't think it is, but therein lies the beauty of the characters. Despite there being more villains than heroes and more corruption than you can possibly imagine, all of the characters are compelling. You love to hate most of them. When I say characters, I mean all of the people in the game who actually get speaking parts. Ironically, this doesn't include any police officers. Anyway, the depravity of some of the most important people in the city will sometimes have your skin crawling. The most corrupt person in the entire game, and the main antagonist is Mayor Stuart Rogers. Mayor Rogers is, as the game so bluntly puts it, a racist, sexist, homophobic, sexual deviant who doesn't give a single shit about his constituents. It's been proven that he's assaulted nearly all of the young women who have worked at City Hall, on top of many other illegal and unsavory acts. Even he, the worst person in the world, is someone who you enjoy seeing in cutscenes. Everything that comes out of his mouth makes you want to vomit, but isn't that really cool in a way? The character of Mayor Rogers was so well written that even his small screen presence leaves a horrible taste in your mouth that makes you want to drag him to hell yourself. All of that was to say that every single character's presence packs a gigantic punch, despite the small amount of dialogue in comparison to many other games. I and some of my viewers were even in awe of very minor characters like Jack's elderly mother-in-law. Even Jack's wife, whose character model you don't even see, says things that make you feel some real emotions. The things you'll experience while playing this game are not for the faint of heart or for anyone looking for a light and easy game. This game is a dark and depressing view of reality. Even the humor is cynical and sarcastic. I personally love that shit. It puts into perspective so many things that are talking about these days. The characters, even the absurdly evil ones, make the story worthwhile. So, I don't get
freeform jazz.
But the music in this game is just the tops. I found myself dancing in my seat more times than not, and despite it only being background music, I'd argue that it's integral to the story of the game. It's a strange concept when it comes to games, having to worry about picking the music and filling the silence. Usually the music is already there and we don't even have to think about it playing, but the music is all up to you in this game. You get to choose what record or cassette or CD you listen to. You can order new music, and the songs are only 2 to 3 minutes long, so you gotta make sure you choose another track, lest there be awkward silences during your long workday. The music is quite representative of Jack's journey. The first act of the game has you playing nostalgia-laced records, which goes with Jack being an institution of the police. He's comfortable with his job, he's older now and prefers a more laid-back lifestyle. The tracks during this act are catchy and upbeat or slow and smooth, but I can describe all of them as providing a sense of comfort. None of the tracks are foreboding or imposing. It's a nice introduction to what you're going to be doing. Some of my favorite tracks are on the record player. As time goes on, however, and Jack ends up in the hospital, twice, the tracks become more surreal and almost manic in nature. By the time the third act rolls around, almost half your CD collection consists of synth-pop or new wave music that makes you think of Blade Runner, and the other half is remixes of music from the first act that makes it clear that Jack is a far more broken and melancholic man than at the start of the game. Make sure you check out all the tracks if you play the game. You'd be doing a disservice to both yourself and the story if you don't. Let's move on to the parts of the game that I didn't find super enjoyable. Honestly, the things I highlighted in the positive section of this game unfortunately don't take up most of the game. I would say that the devil is in the details, and also the Mayor Freebird, but there are some pretty fundamental flaws in the gameplay that make the game a bit tedious. Now, for the record, I have not played the sequel to this game, so it's entirely possible that they improved upon what I'm about to call out. But we're just going to stick to what we know right now, and that is, some of the game's mechanics seem quite incomplete. Allow me to explain. I kind of want to talk about the ending straight away, but maybe I should save that for the end of this rant. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Alright, first of all, I'm going to say that the game is a giant tease. They give you a taste of what could possibly be a giant game-changing decision, but it turns out to be not much of anything. There are going to be some spoilers in this section, just so you know. I'd recommend you go play the game first if you don't want to hear about them. If you're good with it, let's continue forward. At the beginning of the game, the first decision you make seems to be pretty important to the plot. Your deputy has been accused of corruption and admits to you that he's been working with the Mafia for some time. Now that his career is over, he asks you to take his place as the Mafia informant. You can either say yes or no, but it really doesn't matter. You're going to be working with them whether you like it or not. I'll admit this adds a lot of intrigue to the story, but seemingly giving the player a choice seems a bit unfair. The choice barely makes an impact on the scripted story, even though you as the player might want to have Jack be a beacon of good and refuse to work with the Mafia. Okay, fine, this is Jack's story, so be it. Unfortunately, this is the most mild of mistakes. Later on, you'll have the opportunity to solve gruesome murders and take down entire gangs that are plaguing the city. Well, as cool as that sounds, it also amounts to nothing. There's no difference in gameplay or the story. You do get to keep some of the prize money for taking down the gang, but that's it. I mentioned earlier that the game teases you, and this whole taking down of gangs is definitely one of those instances. The way it works is that you investigate a crime using the detectives on your squad. This investigating is literally just clicking on the pictures of detectives with high professional levels. You wait around for a few in-game days and you'll start collecting these frames. Using the witness testimony that's just kind of there, you need to build a sequence of events using the frames to tell the story in pictures. It honestly becomes tedious to do because some of the sequences don't even make sense, but maybe that's just because I'm stupid. Anyway, the whole mechanic makes me wonder why we're doing this in the first place. We're the police chief. Our detectives apparently do enough legwork to get the frames, so why do they need us to put the things in a sequence? In addition to all that teasing, we don't even get to have anything to do with the actual arrest or the suspect. It just pops up as a notification on your screen after you decide to send some officers to assist the detective. That's it. I'm not creative enough to suggest a better way of doing this type of stuff, but I think it may have melded better if you were involved in a more bureaucratic capacity. Like, you're not the one actually solving the crimes, but maybe you choose the equipment the detectives are able to use for the investigation, or maybe you contact other investigative groups to help out your detectives. I don't know. It just seemed like they were trying to get you involved with the investigating, but then not all the way. I think it could have been better somehow. Now that I've talked about that part, I can move on to step 2 of the flawed investigation process. After you solve a crime, the game may reveal to you that the perpetrator was part of a larger organization that you can investigate. You can use a suspect that you caught as an informant to gain information on their superiors in the gang. Although you may have the ability to actually torture the person to gain information, the right choices in dialogue will give you the info you supposedly need. After you get the information, the whole process just starts over again. You investigate some crime that some other person in the gang was involved in, and you make them an informant, and it keeps going until you reach the very top of the pyramid. At this point, you can click your mouse twice, and that will eliminate the entire gang, netting you some nice money, and that's it. Congrats on taking down the Mafia that's been extorting you since the beginning of the game. You get nothing. Yay. Not only is this an unsatisfying end to your efforts of putting annoying frames in the right order over and over, you don't even get to meet all the players in the gang that you're trying to take down. I don't know if maybe there was a plan for the whole gang and it just ended up not making it into the game, but it's still pretty disappointing. I will say that there are exceptions to this monotony, but definitely not enough for me to feel differently about what I've said. After a while, the game sort of drags on and on. At first, it feels great to respond to a bank robbery and have your officers do everything right, but when there are apparently 5 bank robberies in a day, it gets old. I appreciate the choices that the game gives you when you respond to calls sometimes, but even then, failing to make the right choice doesn't really make an impact either. Another thing that I found kind of upsetting was the fact that you get to work with different factions in the city, but a lot of the things you can do seem pretty useless. I couldn't tell if maybe it was just a joke, but the game doesn't tell you exactly what a lot of the services are for. For example, you eventually get to know the head of a shadowy corporation called Atticus Corp. The company offers you some cool things and others that make you scratch your head. Why would I choose to do this? What does any of this church stuff mean? Is it just a joke? I don't have much to say on the topic past that. It's just a bit confusing and disappointing, so I wanted to point it out. Alright, now I get to talk about the biggest offender in the game, the ending. I talked about Mayor Rogers earlier and how absolutely horrible he is. You spend the entire game answering to him and having to send your officers to petty bullshit like saving parking spaces and random mayoral parties that need security. He asks a lot of horrible things of you, like eventually you have to decide whether or not you want to fire everyone on your staff who's black, then men, then those who support the mayor. Doing what the mayor says will gain you favor and allow you to hire more police officers or ask for a raise, but I don't think it's worth it. We were all raging every single time Rogers asked us to do something because he was such a horrible person. Literally every single day we were waiting to take the guy down. Can we kill him today? Can we storm City Hall now? When is he going to die of old age? Well, I'll tell you that finally, at the end of the game, you can decide to storm City Hall and essentially start a coup. In my playthrough, it worked, despite the really stupid way it's set up, but the end result is extremely anticlimactic. To be fair, there are multiple endings depending on who you choose to ally with, but I cannot bring myself to play the entire game all over again just to find out what happens in these other endings. Anyway, from the beginning of the game, there's been this building of tension that you know will result in some explosive and life-changing event at City Hall. You wait and wait and wait, and wonder when all your secret meetings with political opponents of the mayor will pay off. And then... To sum up, there are a lot of great things about this game, and I would recommend playing it for a really unique gaming experience. At the same time, there are some pretty large flaws that need to be worked on when it comes to player choice and consequence. I was hoping for a bit more, but I will say that playing this game on stream was super fun. I and my viewers got super into it, and I think that This Is the Police is so ironically relevant right now that you'll really enjoy it and probably feel pretty strongly about a few things. Okay, I'm done talking now. I have no good way to end this video, so I'll let Jack Boyd do it for me.
Go fuck yourself, Troy Star.
Thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. If you want to see more videos like this, I hate to say something like this, but I did start a Patreon, and the link for it is in the description. I would love to do a video like this every single week, and I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. So, in addition to streaming, I would love to do this, and I really appreciate your time and just your support and everything. There's absolutely no need to donate if you really don't want to. I just ask that maybe you come hang out with me on the stream at some point. You can find me at twitch.tv/brownieinthebin. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.